Section 5.3 of the landscape moves away from just the strategy, the standards, and starts to look at the life cycle perspective of how we support information as a asset to the organization. So here we want to manage data across its full life cycle, from creation or collection through to using, storage, and of course, finally disposal. We want to be able to define who is the owner, the steward, and of course the governance control of the asset data itself, ensuring the data quality, data completeness, security, and accessibility for those that actually need it, supporting decision-making with accurate, reliable, and timely information wherever possible, and even if information isn't available real-time, as long as that's called out and the cost to bring it to real-time is understood, that may not be such a big issue. And then, of course, just very similar to ISO 10007 configuration management, we want to embed processes to audit, assure, and continually improve information management so it supports decision making. In any organization, and especially ones that are large, complex, geographically diverse, we run the real risk that no one is actually accountable for data accuracy or the maintenance of that data. Data ownership and responsibility is key, but what we need to do is actually assign clear roles for the data stewardship, the governance, the control, and wherever possible, incorporate that back into job descriptions. User adoption is really that context that people don't really want to use the system and feel in some ways they're being forced to. One symptom of that is when people bypass using the system itself. They'll keep what we call shadow records, their own personal spreadsheets, their little files on their local drive. That is a real risk to an organization. If that person leaves or becomes incapacitated, that may be holding critical information to support decisions. So we need to really look at simplifying processes, training the users in the importance, and demonstrating the system benefits. When you're looking at the coordinated activity, you're moving into a whole of life cycle perspective. We all need to play our part, and user adoption and wanting to enter into a system is the starting point to do so. Trust in data can sometimes feel like an excuse as opposed to a risk, but we need to be able to understand it in relation to the organization. So again, people start to distrust the data quality. In reality, if that is true, it will lead to experience-based decisions, discretionary decisions, which can actually unravel a lot of good for an organization. It may be okay in the short term, but not the longer term, especially as an organization grows. So to get around that, we need to build confidence through assurance checks. Those controls and governance is what provides the outcome that we're seeking, which is all about what assurance is, confidence in outcomes, and visible improvements in data accuracy. That is a fantastic lead indicator if you're ever working on putting your data requirements into a commercial contract. That is a great lead indicator, but it's one that's mutually supportive by both the client and the supplier. There is a risk, but sometimes it can be paranoia. Sometimes it can also be an excuse. And staff worry about the misuse of data or breaches, privacy, commercial insights, leak of IP, etc., and become limiting in their willingness to share information internally and, of course, externally. Cybersecurity and privacy concerns are there, but we need to educate people into, one, what does that mean in the context of the organization? What are the real consequences? And of course, how do we change the likelihood of ever occurring those consequences by communicating security measures, providing awareness training, and again, those principles of ISO 27001, especially in the statement of applicability, organizational controls, people controls, etc., can actually start to mitigate and disperse some of those deeper concerns, which will improve your data and information culture. Again, cross-functional collaboration brings us back to the coordinated activity. The risk here is different functions working in silos, hoard data, see it as control, seeing it as we know better, and limit that sharing and integration with the rest of the organization, which can stifle the asset management lifecycle, but also remove decision making on the service and product lifecycle. We need to promote data as a shared asset. We look at culture through those collaboration forms. But again, as an organization, understanding how each function supports earlier on in maybe the idea and optioneering through to the design, construct, all the way through to the logistical support, maintenance and operations. If we all get together and work out what information and data we need to inform decisions as we go across the life cycle, everyone starts working as one, and we start to think about collaboration as opposed to just meaningless consensus. Adaptability to change might feel like a choice, a willingness to do so. But how we do so is also a capability within any organization, as we saw in organizational change management. There's a real risk that new technologies, regulations, etc., make current information management processes obsolete, impaired, or fall short of what's actually required, be it for us, our organization, or for the stakeholders who are receiving the value. We want to get around that by establishing regular reviews and invest in flexible, pragmatic, scalable systems. But again, adaptability to change is holistically in consideration of people, process, technology, and if you think about the fourth one, data, we can't look at each of those in isolation. They all work together, and adaptability, as we saw in ISO 55000, is a key asset management outcome. From an ISO 55001 perspective, the two obvious ones around information and data management is really 7.5, documented information, writing down and recording what it is we actually need to manage by way of data. The second one, 9.1, monitoring and measurement. What is it that we have? Are we actually getting benefit from it? And then underpinning the whole plan, do, check and act as it relates to the data lifecycle. So in summary, information management ensures that the right people have the right data in the right format at the right place to make good asset decisions. Now again, this is a life cycle approach to asset information and asset data. Look at ISO 55013 as another guidance to supporting this very perspective, because as the world moves forward and we become more disparate, AI, ML, all the sort of information flows in an organization, this becomes absolutely paramount.